She stood in the kitchen that morning, wearing her scrubs like armor, a travel mug of coffee in one hand and her phone in the other. Her hair was tied back, as always, efficient, practical. But even through all that routine, she was still beautiful to me. I reached over, kissed her forehead, and told her to be safe. That's when she looked up at me. Eyes soft, familiar, and with a voice that had soothed countless patients, she whispered, "I love you." Just like that. Simple, steady, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. As if it still meant everything. And I believed her. That's the part that hurts the most when I think back. I didn't doubt it. Not for a second. Because when someone you love looks you in the eyes and says they love you back, you don't cross-examine them. You don't overthink. You hold on to that moment. You breathe it in. You let it carry you through the day. So I smiled, told her I love her too, and watched her walk out the door, confident, composed, my wife, my nurse, my home. I didn't know I'd replay that moment 100 times later, searching for cracks in her voice, some flicker in her eyes, anything to hint at what was really going on beneath that calm surface. But there was nothing. That's what made it so cruel. The lie didn't live in her words. It lived in the space between them, in what she chose not to say, in what she kept hidden inside a patient's chart of all places. But that morning was ordinary, perfectly ordinary. The kind of morning you remember only when your life starts falling apart. The kind that haunts you because it felt safe. It felt real. I cleaned up the mugs. I folded laundry. I watered the plants she always forgot. I texted her halfway through the day to say I missed her, and she replied with a heart emoji, and me too. Nothing strange. Nothing suspicious. Just the kind of sweet exchange couples share every day. And yet, somewhere in the middle of that day, while I was thinking about dinner, while I was scrolling through photos of us last summer at the lake, she was writing something else. Somewhere in that hospital, while I was planning a future, she was scripting an ending. But at that moment, I didn't know. All I knew was that she loved me, or so I thought. I believed in the promise I saw in her eyes that morning. I trusted the way her voice didn't tremble when she said it. And maybe that's why what happened next would shake me so violently. Because the fall is always harder when you were standing on something you thought was solid. If you've ever laid next to someone who made you feel completely alone, then maybe this story isn't just mine, it's ours. And if that's true, subscribe. Because stories like this deserve to be heard by those who understand. Her shift started at 6 p.m. Nights were always harder for her. Or so she used to say. The long hours, the dim hallways, the endless rhythm of beeping monitors, and late-night emergencies. I used to worry. I used to stay up, waiting for her texts. I used to imagine her saving lives while the rest of the city slept. And every time she walked through that door in the early morning, exhausted but proud, I'd meet her with coffee and open arms. That was our routine. That was love. That was trust. But that evening, something felt different. She left in a hurry. Nothing dramatic. Nothing suspicious. But her hug was looser. Her kiss didn't linger. She smiled, but only with her mouth, not her eyes. And I told myself not to overthink it. I told myself she was just tired. Nurses carry so much, right? The weight of pain, loss, hope. It's normal for her to be distant sometimes, right? But still, I watched her drive off, and for the first time in a long time, a sliver of unease slid under my skin. A whisper I couldn't silence. What if something's wrong? I tried to distract myself. Cooked dinner. Cleaned the bathroom. Folded clothes I'd already folded once. I even started a movie, but my mind wasn't there. My phone sat next to me, silent. Usually, she sent me updates. Funny patient stories, staff drama, a selfie from the break room. But that night, nothing. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. I kept checking my phone, justifying her silence. Maybe it was a crazy night. Maybe someone coded. Maybe she was just too tired. But that whisper inside me grew louder and louder. At 2:13 a.m., her name finally lit up my screen. A single message. Hey? All good. Long night. Love you. And I stared at it. Read it again. Something about it didn't feel right. The period at the end. The lack of emojis. No, babe. No heart. Just cold. Distant. Efficient. Like a status update. Not a message from someone who missed me. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, phone on my chest, trying to silence the thoughts racing through me. Maybe I was just being insecure. Maybe I'd been watching too many documentaries. Maybe my own fears were warping reality. But another part of me, quieter, older, wiser, kept saying, you already know. And in that moment, I felt something in my chest begin to tighten. Something deep inside me bracing for impact. Because trust, once cracked, doesn't need a reason to unravel. It just needs silence. I don't care about algorithms. I care about the people listening to this who are bleeding silently like I did. If you've ever held back tears just to protect someone who didn't protect you, subscribe. You don't have to do this alone anymore. The next morning was quieter than usual. She came home just after 7 a.m., tossed her bag down, kicked off her shoes, and headed straight for the shower without saying much. That wasn't new. Sometimes she was too exhausted to speak. I made coffee like I always did, waited for her to join me at the kitchen table. When she finally sat down, hair wet, robe tied loosely, she looked distant. Her smile came late. Her hands fidgeted with the mug. I asked how her shift went. She said, long, nothing special. Then silence. Her eyes were elsewhere, scanning something far beyond the kitchen wall. I wanted to believe her, but something inside me had already started searching for cracks. Later that afternoon, a call came in from the hospital. A woman's voice, polite but rushed, asking if Emily had accidentally taken a clipboard home with some patient paperwork attached. I told her I didn't know, but I'd check. She apologized for the inconvenience, said it wasn't urgent, just a routine follow-up. We hung up. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured I'd glance around her things. Maybe it had slipped into her bag. Harmless. Helpful, even. So I opened the closet where she kept her work gear. There, tucked between a folded jacket and her stethoscope case, was a small clipboard. I pulled it out. A couple of pages clipped neatly together. Most of it was typed, standard patient intake forms. Nothing that meant anything to me, until I turned the page and saw it, handwritten, in her writing. A note, not addressed to a patient, not clinical. It read, "You make this place bearable, even when everything else feels like a lie." No name, no context, but those words hit me like a truck. Bearable? Lie? Who was she writing to? I flipped the page again. And there it was, at the bottom of a discharge summary, beneath vital signs and follow-up instructions, another handwritten note. "Your eyes are the only thing keeping me awake through these shifts." A heart symbol, a small one, but enough to make my hands shake. I had never seen her write like that, not even to me, and certainly not in a patient's chart. I sat down, the clipboard on my lap, every breath heavy and sharp. It didn't feel like I was reading hospital paperwork. It felt like I was reading a private diary I was never meant to see. And the worst part? A part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't what it looked like, that I was mistaken, that this was some weird inside joke with a coworker, that there was a reasonable, innocent explanation. But deep down I knew, because when love is real, it's honest, even when it's hard. And what I held in my hands wasn't honesty. It was hidden. It was emotional intimacy etched in handwriting. It was a confession buried beneath clinical ink. A moment shared not with me, but with someone else. Someone she saw every night. Someone who wasn't her husband. And just like that, the floor beneath my world began to crack. I sat there for nearly an hour, just holding the clipboard like it was some kind of explosive device that could go off with the wrong movement. My eyes kept rereading her words, again and again, as if maybe I had misunderstood them the first time, as if some hidden, innocent meaning would appear if I just looked hard enough. But the truth was there, inked in her familiar loops and curves. This wasn't documentation. It was devotion, quiet, secret devotion to someone else. I flipped back to the patient's name. I hadn't paid attention before, but now I stared at it like it meant something. Rafael Mendez. A name I didn't recognize. Not a friend. Not family. Just Raphael. And suddenly, that wasn't just any name. That was the name. That was the man behind the words. The one who made her feel alive at 3 a.m. when I was asleep in our bed. The one she looked forward to seeing at work. The one whose eyes, according to her, kept her awake through those long shifts. A coldness spread through my chest as a dozen moments came back to me. The days she said she was drained but smiled at her phone. The sudden laughter she explained away as something silly a coworker said. The time she said she was too tired to talk but stayed up late texting. The stories I never questioned. The timelines that never quite added up. It all pointed back to him. And then came the final blow. On the last page of the chart, she had written, "I wish we met in another life." Just like that. No explanation. No name this time. But she didn't have to sign it. I knew that handwriting better than my own. I had read every birthday card she ever gave me. Every note she used to leave in my lunchbox. I would recognize her words even if they were burned into stone. My hands shook uncontrollably, not just from anger, not just from heartbreak, but from grief. Grief for a version of my life that had just died without warning. I was mourning a marriage I thought I had, a love I thought was exclusive. I wasn't holding a clipboard. I was holding the autopsy report of my relationship. The diagnosis was clear, unfaithful. And the prognosis? Irreversible. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront her right then and there. But I didn't. I sat in silence, the kind of silence that feels like drowning. My mind raced with questions I didn't know how to ask. Was this a one-time mistake? Was it emotional? Was it physical? Was it both? Did she love him? Did she still love me? Or had I been a placeholder, a background character in a drama I didn't know was unfolding? And then the most terrifying thought hit me. How long had I been the only one in this marriage? I had always believed that love could survive anything. Stress, long hours, distance. But what I saw in that chart wasn't just cheating. It was connection. Emotional, raw, and deliberate. She didn't just break vows. She built a bond with someone else, and then buried it beneath the files of her everyday job, thinking I'd never find it. But I did, and nothing would ever be the same again. I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling as her breathing beside me remained calm, steady, like someone without a single storm inside them. And that made it worse. How could she sleep so peacefully while I was falling apart in silence just inches away? I wanted to wake her. I wanted to shake her and ask who the hell Raphael was. I wanted to know everything. But I was terrified of the answers. Because once you ask a question, once you open that door, you can never unhear what walks through it. I got up at 3 a.m. and walked to the kitchen. I opened a beer, then another. I reread the notes I had photographed from the chart. My hands trembled less this time, not because I was calmer, but because the shock was wearing off, and in its place, rage was slowly blooming. Not loud rage, not the kind that throws plates or slams doors. The quiet kind, the kind that poisons you slowly, the kind that whispers, "You were a fool." Over the next few days, I started watching her differently. Every smile she gave me felt like a performance. Every hug felt calculated. Every "I love you" felt hollow, like it was borrowed from someone else's script. I began to notice the way she looked at her phone before responding to me, the way she laughed alone when she thought I wasn't looking. And the worst part? She wasn't distant anymore. She was trying harder. She started cooking dinner again. She kissed me longer. She texted more often during shifts. It was like she could sense I was slipping, and she was trying to pull me back, but with the same hands that were holding someone else. It wasn't guilt. It was preservation. And then one night, while folding laundry, I found something I never expected to see, an old card tucked into her uniform pocket. It wasn't addressed to anyone, just 3 lines scribbled quickly on the back of a post-op checklist. You make me feel alive again, like I'm not just a nurse, like I'm a woman. My stomach dropped. That wasn't for me. She had never said anything like that to me, not even in our best years. And that's when I realized something far more painful than betrayal. She had given a part of herself to him that I never even knew she still had. She wasn't just cheating. She was rediscovering herself with him. Raphael wasn't just a fling. He was a mirror. He reflected something back to her, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Passion, youth, spontaneity. Things we had replaced with schedules, bills, and grocery lists. And while I was building a future, she was living in a secret present, one where love wasn't measured by years, but by adrenaline, by whispers in hospital corridors, by glances over patient monitors. She had written a love story in the margins of her profession, and I had been edited out. That's the part no one warns you about, that you can lose your partner not to someone better, but to someone new, someone who sees them differently, someone who reminds them of who they used to be or who they want to become. She gave her care to strangers all day, but her heart had been prescribed to another, quietly, repeatedly, and somewhere along the way, I became the background music to a romance I never signed up for. It became unbearable to live between her lives. The one she showed me, bright, structured, safe, and the one she kept hidden behind scrubs and hospital walls. Every morning she came home smelling like antiseptic and lavender lotion, kissed me like everything was fine, and talked about patients I'd never meet. But now I listened for subtext, for cracks, for names she might accidentally repeat. I dissected her every sentence like I was the one holding the chart, trying to make a diagnosis of my own. Was she still lying? Was he still in the picture? The more I watched, the more I saw it. Her phone never left her hand. She turned it upside down on the table when we ate. Her laugh was different now, short, restrained, like she was afraid it would reveal too much. And sometimes, when she thought I was asleep, she'd lie beside me in the dark, breathing shallow, scrolling through something or someone. I stopped asking, because part of me already knew the answers, and the other part wasn't ready to hear them out loud. But knowing something and accepting it are two very different things. I wanted to confront her. I rehearsed it 1,000 times in my head. But I also knew that once I said the words, we'd never go back. Once I showed my cards, her mask would drop, or she'd double down. And the idea that I might be right, that everything I feared was true, was more painful than pretending I didn't know. So I lived in limbo, stuck between a lie I couldn't ignore and a love I couldn't let go of. Some days, I'd look at her and still feel the woman I fell in love with. Her sleepy smile, the way she held her coffee with both hands, the way she rubbed my back absent-mindedly while watching TV. But then I'd remember she did all that while loving someone else, too. She had built 2 lives, and I was only welcome in one of them. I began to notice the inconsistencies. The moment she said she was exhausted, but her eyes sparkled. The calls she took in the hallway. The shift in her voice when she spoke certain names. And worst of all, the way she touched me, like muscle memory, not desire, like obligation, not affection. Our intimacy had become a script, one she performed because the audience expected it, not because her heart was in the role. And I couldn't take it anymore. I started pulling away, quietly, emotionally. I stopped asking about her day, stopped sending her, "I love you," texts during shifts. I slept on the edge of the bed. I answered with nods instead of words. I became invisible in my own marriage, not because she pushed me out, but because I couldn't keep living as half of a lie. The truth was no longer a shock. It had become a background hum, a constant ache that lived under my skin. I had stopped bleeding, but I hadn't healed. And I realized that the only thing worse than being lied to was lying to yourself about what you already knew. Her 2 lives had merged into one, and I was a ghost haunting both. That if this sounds like your life, stop pretending you're fine. Stop hiding it like I did. Subscribe, not for me, but for every person who thought they were crazy, until the truth finally shattered them. You're safe here. We see you. It wasn't planned. I didn't rehearse it that morning. I didn't stare into the mirror building up courage. It just happened, like a dam finally giving in to the pressure. She came home early from her shift, still in scrubs, still smelling like the sterile mix of hospital air and hand sanitizer. I was at the kitchen counter, holding the envelope I had placed there hours ago. Inside it, a printout of the chart notes. Her handwriting. the ones I couldn't unread, the ones that had been echoing in my mind like sirens in the dark. She walked in, dropped her keys into the bowl like always, and greeted me with that familiar, "Hey, babe," like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger in familiar skin, a woman I had memorized but no longer understood. "What's this?" she asked when she noticed the envelope. "Open it," I said. My voice was quiet, calm, but inside me, every nerve was screaming. She pulled out the papers. Her eyes scanned them. I watched her expression carefully. Every twitch, every breath. At first, confusion, then recognition, and finally, panic. She folded the papers, slowly, like delaying the moment would undo it. "I can explain," she said. I laughed. It wasn't bitter. It was hollow. "Of course you can. You're a nurse. You know how to make people feel safe even when they're dying." She reached for my hand. I pulled it away. "Who is he?" I asked. I didn't want a speech, just a name. One name to give the ghost in our house a face. She didn't say anything. I took a step back. "You said you loved me. You said it every day. So tell me, was it a lie every time or just after the night shifts?" Tears welled up in her eyes. But I didn't want her tears. I wanted truth. I wanted the woman I married to face the man she betrayed and not hide behind emotion. "I never meant for it to go that far," she finally whispered. "That far. So it did happen. I had imagined every version. Maybe it was emotional, maybe just flirtation. But no, it had gone that far. And maybe further. And she had let it. I felt invisible," she continued. "You were always working. You stopped noticing me. I needed to feel alive again." I nodded. It made sense, but it didn't make it right. "I was building a future," I said. "I was working so we could live well, so we could have a family, so we could travel. I wasn't ignoring you. I was sacrificing for us." She wiped her tears. "I know, but somewhere along the way, I got lost, and he made me feel seen. That was a wound, not the act, not the affair, but the fact that someone else saw her when I didn't, that she let him. There was no yelling, no breaking plates, just silence, thick, final. She asked if I wanted to fix it. I said I didn't know, because the truth was, even if she stayed, something already left, something that didn't fit back into the box, and no amount of "I'm sorry" could glue it back together. Sometimes the worst betrayals aren't loud. They wear scrubs. They hold your hand. They come home and kiss you goodnight and leave parts of themselves behind in someone else's heartbeat. And in that moment, I realized the woman I loved was still there, but the trust, that died in the patient's chart. She packed lightly, just a duffel bag and the silence we both avoided for too long. No shouting, no begging, no desperate explanations. Just the sound of zippers, folded clothes, and unspoken endings. It felt less like a goodbye and more like a quiet discharge from a place once called home that no longer treated what was broken. I sat on the edge of the bed as she moved around the room we once shared. Every step she took echoed in my chest, like a memory walking out the door. She looked at me once, eyes red, mouth trembling, as if trying to say something, but stopped herself. And maybe that was best. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't bleed. She left her wedding ring on the nightstand, not in the box, just resting there, cold against the wood, like a symbol that had lost its purpose. When the door finally closed behind her, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't fall apart. I just breathed. For the first time in weeks, I could hear myself think. And in that silence, I realized something. I wasn't mourning her anymore. I was mourning the version of me that loved her without question, the man who trusted blindly, the husband who believed love alone was enough. But love isn't enough when one heart beats in two different rooms. That night, I made a promise to myself not to hate her, not to destroy what remained her image, but to rebuild a man who got lost inside the idea forever. Because sometimes the worst breakups aren't between two people. They're between who you were and who you have to become now. And if you've ever been there, sitting in the quiet, trying to gather the pieces of a love that shattered behind your back, I see you. Your pain is real, but so is your strength. You will rise. You will breathe again. And if this story touched something inside you, if you've ever loved someone who loved someone else in secret, then join me. Subscribe. This isn't just a channel. It's a place for those who've been burned and still choose to believe in light. For those who lost everything but didn't lose themselves. Because you're not alone. Not here. Not anymore that you've come this far. That means something. You felt this. You lived it. Maybe not this exact story, but your own version of it. So if you're still here, still breathing under the weight of something they'll never apologize for, hit subscribe. Because no one should walk through this kind of betrayal alone. And if no one else says it, I will. I'm glad you're still here.